What's happening, everybody? We welcome you back to another episode of San Diego Prep Insider, joined by Tommy Morris for the first time this year. What's happening, Tommy?
Happy to be here.
All right, so behind Tommy, we have top secret play number one of the season. Tommy apparently every week is going to be bringing you guys some new. Is it going to be all offense? Is it going to take a variety?
I didn't know that was back there. I'm embarrassed. I thought, yeah.
Okay.
So that I was working on.
Not coordinated show bit about different plays that Coach Tommy Morris is bringing
Shouldn't be showing that.
My apologies. We will blur that out. Fake news. Totally not the real plays at all.
Yeah. So this is a dive right.
32 left.
Out of the wing tee.
For the touchdown. This is just
never been seen before.
Yeah. For the score. Dive right for the score. No matter the down and distance. Thank you again for joining us, Tommy. Week 1 in the books. Obviously, you are coming to us as a La Jolla coach. I am a La Jolla alum. We together can talk forever about what Jackson Deal did, and I want to get to that eventually. But outside of that, you will be our weekly La Jolla hype man. Anything catch your eye from week 1 that you're kind of like, oh, hot damn, like this thing's already, this season's already real?
Well, you obviously get with week 1 a lot of little hiccups, but I think countywide, those are down a lot. And I don't know if maybe it's because the last couple of years have been wonky with COVID and how much can you practice in the spring and all kinds of stuff like that. But I would say overall, as a whole, a lot of teams looked a lot sharper, this week than they did in previous week 1. So that just is a testament to them, the amount of work that all the kids throughout San Diego have been doing.
Yeah, I actually had not thought about that until you brought that up for show prep today. And you're right. There really weren't. Maybe the surprising thing was the lack of upsets. To put what you're saying in a different term, and that just being that everybody kind of executed super well. Chula Vista was one of the teams for me that really stood out. They played your Country Day Tories and 48 points. I slated this team as being able to do 50 every game. So out the gate, they're very close to that mark. I think they become maybe the de facto D4 favorites. Also, Rancho Bernardo being as close to Poway as they were, I thought was interesting with Coach Weddle getting underway with a really, that's a rivalry game. That's a huge game out the gate to start at. Both of those were some of the things that really caught my eye. But yeah, in general, you are absolutely right. Well executed week 1. One of the other teams, though, that I saw was the Saturday game, and that was Granite Hills. They executed really well. They are defending state one of the something number, double, single, or A. Like, it all kind of confuses me as to who is what state champion. But they are defending CIF Division III and state champions. They jumped from 3 to 1. They beat Mission Hills to open the season. How much on the scale of Tommy Morris's 0 to for real is Granite Hills this year?
For real. That result did not surprise me. I know that they graduated both their quarterbacks, some of their secondary members, but you look at it, they still have a bunch of Division I recruits there. We played them last year in the playoffs. They're a very good team. They're no joke. I think they're probably good enough to make the open, but we'll see. Time will tell.
Well, you mentioned make the open. Is this the worst? Like, do you want to wait one more year post Sayans at Carlsbad, and should anybody be gunning for that? I mean, are we talking good enough to compete with Lincoln and Carlsbad? I know this is hyperbolic post week 1, but it gives us that juicy bits to just think about for the duration of this season. Are you talking about they could be that good that Granite Hills could jump from D3 to competitive open division team, not just, they made it mathematically because of whatever their schedule, yada, yada?
I think they can be competitive with pretty much anyone. I think, you're asking a lot to go against the number 1 quarterback in the country, but or the also number 1 quarterback in the country if you talk about Lincoln, depending on the year you're talking about. But yeah, I think they can be competitive with anyone.
I absolutely love that. That was one of the Saturday games, which brought me to another one of the questions I had for you. You have now been in the coaching ranks after being full-time media for, I want to say this is like 4 or 5 years now for you, at least, that you've been out there doing it. And you've slowly seen it turn from a Thursday or Saturday game would either because you were playing against Bishops and they didn't have a field that Friday, or SFC on a Saturday day. Like, it was kind of a rarity. No Thursday games, to now we're talking about 15 games Thursday or Saturday. is this impacting the coaching? Like, this feels like a more tangible, real thing that coaches now have to deal with. Can you give us any insight as to the coaching mindset as to all these schedule adjustments affecting high school football?
Yeah, I think the Saturday games aren't as bad because you have an extra day, essentially. The way that football in general works, football players, football coaches, and kind of all creatures of habit. So you have your normal Monday practice, normal Tuesday practice, normal Wednesday, normal Thursday. You can't do that with a Thursday game. So you have to adjust everything. Saturday, not like I said, not as big of a deal because you have an extra day. So you just get extra time to prepare. So that's not the end of the world. You do get that itching feeling on Friday night, thinking that your brain thinks you're supposed to play a game, right? But you don't have one. So it is just more anticipation, and you're just really, really eager to get out there on Saturday. And then on the back end of it, CF rules, you can't practice on Sunday anyway. So you're not missing really anything on the back end. Yeah, guys are a little more tired or sore on Monday, but that's not really the end of the world. I think the Thursday games are a little more difficult, but it is what it is. Referee shortage, and really not much you can do about it except for keep promoting the fact that people can apply to be referees and they should try it. And we're seeing, I've talked to a lot of them about this, a lot of the referees about this, and the older guys are either feeling too old to do it, or they're just kind of been doing it for so long that they just don't want to do it really anymore. And there really are no younger guys stepping in to try and fill those roles, because it's just not something that I guess people in their 20s think to do. But you do it now, you're going to be one of the upper echelon guys in a few years, and it goes down to payment and all that kind of stuff. But I think there's some things we can do as a county to make it more appealing for people to be referees.
Let's stay on that for just a second. And I will start this off with saying we support the referees and their association and their drive to replace and replenish and grow their ranks. As obviously, like Tommy said, you time out of something. Nobody does something for 45 years without some ebbing and flowing of their passion for it. So it makes sense that as an older generation would start to retire, that the rest of that generation say, hey, I'm not looking around like loving this nearly as much. So on the younger ranks, though, I think that from what I have heard a lot, Tommy, is that also it's sounding like it's taking people a couple of years to get to high school, which I just think has to be tweaked. And I don't want to apply this as like criticism, but as just public feedback, maybe to anybody on that referee side that's listening. I would argue that if you are talking about people who are, high school football players that are back from college and in their early 20s, or people that have been around the game a lot, like, you don't need to educate them on like the game. They know it. They're good. They're ready to go in maybe like, oh, you got to do 1 year of Pop Warner, or you can do, just go straight to the freshman, right? It feels like we're not simplifying this enough.
Well, to play devil's advocate, we were lucky enough to have all the referees that were in training come to a practice, and it was kind of funny to watch because there was literally like 40 of them out there. But there's a lot of little things about being a referee that people don't intuitively know. Like, where do you stand when this happens? What is your responsibility? What should you be looking for? There's a bunch of little nuanced things that are not just what are the rules and what's a penalty and what's not. It's how do I situate myself to view the play the way I'm supposed to based off what my role is. So I do understand, yes, the idea of I know the rules, I can do it. You probably can to an extent, but it's the little things around it. And then, like anything, right? If you're so focused on, well, I need to be 10 yards away here and on the sideline, or I need to be back behind wherever I need to be, how focused are you on the game if part of your focus is on where you need to be positioned? It's kind of like anything. It's kind of like being a player, right? If you're focused on what your route is or who you're supposed to block, all kind of stuff, it's hard for you to play fast. It's hard for the officials to officiate fast unless they've gotten some reps. So that's the flip side of it. It's, would you rather play Thursday and have better referees or more experienced referees, excuse me, or would you rather play Friday and run the risk of having someone who really hasn't been out there before and might make some mistakes that might impact the game? So I personally would rather play on a Thursday and have the more experienced guys, but I know that there's a flip side to it. It's better for the whole high school football experience is built on the Friday nights. So I also understand that as well.
I would also argue that it probably comes down to sort of like a ripping off of the Band-Aid type vibe, that there's just going to be that generation of refs that just have to be a little bit green at some point when they reach the varsity level. Right. That then there is enough of them that we can actually take the time to train the younger ones. But I will also advocate for, check this out as a side hustle. I know that we're talking about a lot of negative this towards referees, negative that towards referees being the like craziness of life lately. But I think that largely, overwhelmingly, people don't realize like this is a pretty dope side hustle to pick up a couple extra $100 every week for hanging out on field, watching some really good high school football. So,
And you're being paid. You're essentially being paid to exercise too if you're referee. I don't think people fact you can go to the gym and like walk on the treadmill and think that you're exercising, where you can actually get out there and run for a couple hours and get in better shape. So there's a lot of positives to it. I would love to be paid to exercise. So yeah, I don't know.
It's like it's like the perfect gym setup. Exactly, Tommy. Also, I mean, look at Ed Hockley. Maybe it's a requirement that you got to bring the guns a little bit to all future referee vibes. Tommy, let's talk about Friday and or Thursday and or Saturday because we got games coming up the rest of this week, and I got a feeling that some of these are going to be games that don't sound quite audibly right to you in terms of the matchups. And the first one there being Santa Fe Christian at Oceanside.
Yeah,
on paper, it makes sense looking at a D2 team, D3 team, but in the grand scheme of being like a San Diego high school football fan, this is like David and Goliath type vibes historically, and you don't think of this matchup happening.
Well, when you see it on the schedule, you almost think it's a typo. Essentially, you're like, you would never assume that Santa Fe Christian would play a school like Oceanside. But if you go back, I think it was 5 years ago, Santa Fe Christian played Torrey Pines and won. So don't count anybody out in these David Goliath type situations because it can't happen and it has happened. I think so for this game specifically, I think Oceanside's on the right track. They were in a 10-10 tie at halftime against San Juan Hills, which is an Orange County school. So it's pretty hard to judge. Where would they be? If you're trying to look at last year, they would have ranked somewhere around a similar level as where Point Loma was. So you factor in the D3 runners up versus, Oceanside. That seems like somewhat of an even matchup. They did let the game kind of slip away in the second half, but for the first half, it was pretty close. Santa Fe Christian lost some players. They had a tough game week 1 against Central. They struggled to move the ball on the ground, which is not very typical for them. Normally, they're a pretty good running team. On defense, plus side, Nate Clifford racked up 12 tackles. He was all over the place. So defensively, they look great. I do think Oceanside is going to win this one, but I'm not going to count out Santa Fe Christian. I watched them beat Torrey Pines firsthand. It's one of those programs that they just always have hardworking kids who are not scared. So while I'm picking Oceanside, I'm not going to bat an eye at Santa Fe Christian.
Yeah, you try to draw the parallels here, and PJ Rogers, their quarterback at Santa Fe Christian, not the most crazy first week, but pair of touchdowns. They were close to Central, which I think Central will be a really, really competitive team this year. Connor Sawyer, though, is the main target. And when there is a tight end quarterback combination, it looks like the Caleb Phillips team that beat Torrey Pines and all that. And like, that's a non sequitur, but hey, it's the formula that we know for SFC that can be really strong and competitive. You talk about Oceanside going to play a San Juan Hills team, and we don't have we'll eventually know. 10 points, they're on the board. It felt like they got the monkey off their back in terms of new coaching, new era, they got the touchdown. I think that SFC can be really competitive in this game, and I'm not going to pick them that'd be the upset of the century, but I wouldn't surprise me if SFC at halftime is tied or in the lead of this game. But I like that this is a really interesting, this is a swing up for SFC, but also can wind up being a very respectable win for Oceanside in the long run. Next game we got is Saints and Poway. Poway is going to be playing at Saints. This is top 10 matchup, like top 5, maybe even per some people's voting, top 8, two really good teams that both looked pretty decent in week 1. Your take on this game, Tommy?
I think this will be a good one. Poway with the rivalry win. By the way, I want to put this out there too. The Poway RB game, both teams wearing their home uniforms, the green and the blue. I wish more rivalries would do this. It's kind of a USC UCLA thing. I believe if you're a coach, you want to do this. I believe you have to have it approved by CEF beforehand, so don't just show up in those uniforms. But I thought it was a great look, and it was a cool little, thing
You're
to
not
add
advocating
on
for all-out chaos.
No, yeah, I don't. Please don't show up in random uniforms and blame it on me. But I thought it was a great look, especially this is one of the longer rivalries in San Diego, the RB Poway game. In that game, Luke Jorgensen had 72 rushing yards and 11 carries. including the game-clinching touchdown. He's only a sophomore. We've seen a long line of good running backs at Poway. This seems to be like maybe the next one, younger kid who might be toting the rock for 3 years. For Saints, really impressive week one. They were playing Patrick Henry, and they were supposed to win this game, and they did. Brady Palmer threw for 2 TD passes. He only got to throw 8 times because it was kind of a lopsided score. 288 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns as a team. This is a very good Saints team, and they're on. This is not, this is like the typical Saints team that we're used to seeing from a few years ago. Not necessarily when they had those couple down years in the recent times, but this is a very good Saints team that will be very competitive in Division I and in the Western League. And I got them this week, but more importantly, where they go with it for the whole season will be very, very interesting.
Yeah, you talk about sophomore Luke Jorgensen and the youth on Poway. There's youth on both sides of this matchup here. I'm looking at the Poway defense being the one that I'm most curious about, because we talked preseason about Adam Farha being one of the best edge presence rushers. But last week, pair of sacks, Johnny Butler registering one, Mikey Steinhauer registering one. So is Saints capable of addressing the Farha situation and the rest of that Poway defense, or can Poway's defense keep this one low scoring? And if I think we could see the same kind of vibes as that 14-6 win in week one, where this is a very grind them out slow game. But if Saints can deal with the upfront pressure, then they will win if this one ends up being a high scoring game. Because when you're putting up a 50 burger that week one, obviously it shows that the Saints offense, like, very much ready to go out the gate. Parker Patterson breaks the century mark with 108 rushing yards. Like, they're ready to go. So I'm watching that front battle in the trenches between the Poway defense and the Saints offense as being the key to this battle. But yeah, man, this is like a treat. Week two, we're already getting these huge games. Next one, we got West Hills at Coronado. Your take, Tommy Morris.
2 very evenly matched teams, 2 teams that are very similar. They would prefer to run the ball and then prefer to play tough football. West Hills, a bunch of tough kids, same with Coronado. So I think it's going to be a quick game. I think it's a lot of running, a lot of clock running, not a lot of possessions either way. West Hills held Imperial to 7 points last week. Very impressive there on defense. For Coronado, Graham Bauer was the star of the show. 12 carries, 122 yards, and 2 touchdowns. We're used to seeing that from him. This is, again, so evenly matched. I do like Coronado in this one. I think offensively they're a little further ahead. So I've got the Islanders, but this is going to be a great game. I think this will come down to one of those, last position of the game type things.
Week one for West Hills. And I like it. I always love a quick one. I love a nice, sub 2 hours. You still get touchdowns. Really just perfect. You get home, get a chance for dinner before stuff closes. Makes a great night. Week one for West Hills' offense was a pretty decent group effort. 7 guys rushing the ball, 5 different receivers, 2 different quarterbacks, spreading out the offense. So they still got some work to do in figuring out who their maybe star is of this offense, or they're just going to be offense by committee all season long, and they're just going to be spreading the love. So I'm going to be looking to see, can we get somebody from West Hills to jump up as their definitive, like, we got to watch this guy for touchdowns, for receiving, for whatever it is he is the game breaker. On the other side, Coronado, like you said, they are a running team, but they're throwing some touchdowns of the 30-yard varieties we saw on our IG reels from Trey Arl. Like, that ability has not always been there in the Coach Hines Coronado teams that we've seen, to have a guy who can drop back reliably and throw, deep spotted touchdowns and stretch that defense out. So that'll be my point of emphasis on the Coronado side. See if they can continue that vertical passing attack to set up the running attack, like you said, that is their really most successful part. You got time for one more game, Tommy?
One more, let's do it.
All right, let's go up north to Orange Glen at Escondido. Your take here.
Yeah, Escondido, new coaching staff. I think that's going to want to air the ball out. So who are they going to have throw it? Well, they got a freshman, Caden Thompson. So if it works out this year, it's going to work out for 4 years. And so far, week one, it looked pretty good. 244 yards for him, 1 touchdown. So in your first ever varsity game as a freshman, that's pretty good. Get the jitters out and get ready for week 2. Orange Glen had a tough week 1 matchup. They played Army Navy, and this is probably the best Army Navy team they've ever had. I'm not saying that facetiously. Like, this is probably the best team that Army Navy's ever had. So
it's an Army Navy team that I will have people know showed up on the potential others to vote for the Union Tribune top 10 already.
Yeah, which for that program, it's phenomenal, and they've got 2 legitimate Division I recruits on that team, and they're going to have a great year. I think it's the best team they've ever had. So Orange Glen should not be too down on themselves for having a tough go of week 1. I do think Escondido will win this game. They had a good showing against Morse. I think they were winning going into the second half, and then it kind of slipped away. Morse, another tough team that likes to run the ball. So I like Escondido here, but we'll see.
Yeah, Morris is up a division from them, and a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, a little bit faster, a little bit more everything. Ended up pulling away in the end. And I do agree that Army Navy is a shoe-in. After looking at all the week 1 results, if they don't win the 5AA championship this year, like, that is rigged, and something very, very happened. Someone ran the top secret play to beat them. That's the only way. We'll make that the narrative all season, that Tommy is laying out the secret plays needed to beat Army Navy in the championship game. Correct. We're on to you. Yeah. Escondido, I want to see it. I want to see the big W here. I think that very winnable game on both sides, but Escondido showed some freshman pieces at that quarterback position that are part of fixing a very large puzzle for them to get into that postseason. Tommy, thank you very much for checking in with us. Any words of wisdom on the special teams front this week? We'll call it our Chris 4 moment of Zen.
Got to block, got to tackle, got to possess the ball.
Got to block, got to possess the ball. 2 teams will be there. 1 team will win unless there is a tie.
Exactly.
All right, Tommy, thanks for checking in. Everybody, we'll talk to you guys soon.